Hey, it's Sammy for another episode of the I Do Music podcast, and our goal and our mission is to empower and educate musicians and artists worldwide. And on today's episode, we sat down with entertainment and tech entrepreneur Rick Spicer discussing his 16-year stint at Universal Music Group and Def Jam, stepping into the future of entertainment with his business AXS GRNTD, and his advice for marketing strategies to artists. Hey, it's Sammy for another episode of the I Do Music podcast, and I'm sitting down with the entertainment and tech entrepreneur, Rick Spicer.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm well, how are you?
I cannot complain. We here, right?
You have kind of like a little radio voice here. It seems like you've done this before.
Hey, we'll do this a little bit, you know. I DJ, you know what I'm saying?
I heard.
We get down.
I heard. So, what does it mean to be an entertainment and tech entrepreneur? What does that mean? Because I know, we're going to talk about your extensive background working with Universal Music Group to Def Jam, 16 years, with your focus on marketing strategy, content creation, et cetera, et cetera. But what does it mean to be an entertainment and tech entrepreneur?
It means that the paradigm of entertainment has shifted so much. When I started out in the game like in the late 90s, early 2000s, where in order to be in the game, you had to be tethered to some kind of company, some kind of mothership, right? My whole dream was to get with a major record label. When I grew up, I used to get that maroon album cover with that tone arm on it that said Def Jam, and I knew that was official. Like, I didn't necessarily have to play the record. I just look at it, I'm like, okay, this got to be official, let me put it on. So that whole thought of being part or tethered to a mothership was the only way to really get in the game. And now as the paradigm has shifted, it's more about making your own way with the skills you have and finding a consistent way to continually be part of the industry, music or tech. So as a tech and entertainment entrepreneur, it's all about taking the skills that I've accumulated over, nearly 20 years and applying it to different situations. While, my foundations was in hip hop and music, you can still take that business model and understanding trends, understanding consumer behavior, and apply that to many different verticals. But they can all still be spokes of the same wheel, if that makes any sense.
No, it does. It makes perfect sense. So how would you say, obviously you knew that you had, in order to be in this music and entertainment space, that you had to associate yourself with some sort of company. So you seem to have stuck with that company for some time. Yeah. How did you get your start in entertainment? Like, what's the background? What was it like? I want to do music. Did you always know you wanted to do music? Like,
Always knew I wanted to do music.
What was the start? What bug hit you? Or when did the bug bite you?
The bug bit me super early on. Every Saturday, me and my mother would go to the record store.
Really?
Without fail. Like, we would wake up in the morning.
Whose idea was that?
My mama.
Really?
Yeah, my mom is a music fiend.
Gotcha.
Like, from old school to today's music. She can tell you, she's like, I don't know who this new one is, but he said da-da-da. And she'll know all the verses. She'll know the hook. What's the artist? And I tell her the artist. She's like, okay. And then next time, she'll come back and be like, yeah, so I listen to Lil Baby. Or I listen to whomever it is, and she'll know a little bit more about them. So I got bitten by the bug, honestly, from my mom.
That's dope.
Every Saturday, we'd go to the record store, and she'd, buy this vinyl, and then she'd also buy the tape so we can listen to it in the car on the way home.
Wow.
Or she'd buy, when it turned to CDs, it'd be like, let me get this CD and this tape. We listen to the tape on the way home, and then we listen to it as soon as we got to the crib. But the other great thing about that is she would say, okay, I want this, this, and this, and then whatever he wants. And I'd be like, okay, let me get this Run DMC album. Let me get, this, that, and the third, this, that, and the third. And then we would listen to all that music in the car together.
That's dope.
So I would listen to quote unquote old school or like R&B stuff, and then she would listen to the hip hop records. And then once we got home, what I would do is I would go upstairs, play video games, or go upstairs and hoop. And little do I know, she's over there listening to all that same music, her music and my music. And then she'd be sitting right in front of the component system with a keyboard, learning how to play all those songs. So I would come back downstairs or back into the spot and see her playing these records. And then I was like, man, that's ridiculous. So from there on, every Christmas and holiday or birthday, I was like, let me get a keyboard. Let me get a drum machine. Let me learn how to produce. Let me figure out how to make this music. And I always had an ear for sampling. Like, I would take her records and be like, oh, this is the loop right here. If I can figure out how to loop this, or back in the day, if I can figure out how to take the lyrics off this beat, and I can rap over this. So it was early on that I realized I have a real penchant for music that's a little bit different than everybody else's.
Got you. So what did your mom do for a living?
Oh, she worked for the government. She had
Wow.
a government job working for the federal government.
Where y'all from?
Cleveland, Ohio, East Side, Shaker Heights, all
Wow.
day. So, she wasn't steeped in music per se.
Yeah.
She just loved it, and that's how all of our family functions were centered around music. Every Saturday, even if we were cleaning the house, or Sunday,
Of course.
music is banging.
Of course, of course.
And we would always talk about who it is or what it is, or when the award shows would come on, hey, everything stopped.
Right.
Sit down, watch this award show together. And I mean, that's the beautiful thing about, I think, my family, and also part of the generation I grew up in, is because it wasn't no such thing as like, I don't like old music. It was like,
Right.
no, this is the stuff that they're sampling here. So
Right.
you have a further appreciation for what came before us.
The foundation.
The foundation. So that was the actual bug that bit me. It was my mother, you know what I mean?
That's
and
right.
having and incubating an area for the love of real music.
Okay. So, I mean, early on, were you like, I want to be a musician, I want to be a DJ? Well, I know you DJ, but I
Yeah.
want, like, what was first
The
for
first
you?
the first thing was I wanted to rap. I wanted to learn how to rap. And
Okay.
I remember writing my garbage raps.
Not
early.
garbage
They were
raps.
trash. They were real garbage raps. But it was funny because I was writing raps from a producer's point of view. I was writing.
What does that mean?
So meaning I was writing lyrics and writing raps in an effort to figure out how to make beats and how to craft samples into long form beats.
Gotcha.
So I was like, let me segment and count these bars, and then I know the beat can flip here. So I was writing to the beat as opposed to, you know what I mean? That's not something that most people do. Typically, you're just writing a rap and you find the beat and see if it works back in the day. But I was like, okay, no, let's figure out how we can segment this so it has a full song form. I mean, again, it was very rudimentary, but who thinks like that at 10 years old or
Right.
12 years old?
Right,
You know what I
right,
mean?
right.
But from there, it was, okay, I like rapping. And then all this hip hop music starts coming out, talking about the golden age. But then what changed the game for me was Wu-Tang.
Why?
Wu-Tang changed the game because, one, obviously we were all West Coast out. Like, we were listening to Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre. West Coast was dominating. Wu-Tang comes back and brings New York a little bit more life. So, 93, Wu-Tang, 36 Chambers comes out, and Midnight Marauders by a Tribe Called Quest comes out. I bought both CDs. And both of those kind of anchored me in the music business, in the fact that, number one, when you got that Midnight Marauder album, every artist on the East Coast was on the album cover. And then when you turned it around, they had so much information about Violator management. They had so much information about all the producers and all the samples. Like, oh, this is what I was learning about back in the day. Oh, you have to document all these samples? Oh, this is the business behind it? Now, back to what I was saying about Wu-Tang. Wu-Tang come out with a different sound, super grimy, super low grade, sounded like they recorded this stuff on tape. And it was still captivating. But business-wise, every single MC had a different label deal. And the group had their own label deal with Loud. I had never heard of anything like that. Like, think about if the Commodores, Lionel Richie and all the guys had separate record deals, or Prince and the Revolution.
Right.
Everyone had a different record deal. That blew my mind. I was like, how does that work? And of course, I didn't know the inner workings of the business like that, but that was the spark, like, let me dig a little deeper to
On
find
this
out
side.
how that works. Yeah, so.
Dope. So, I mean, from there, you spent about 16 years at Universal and Def Jam, Universal Music Group and Def Jam. How did you learn from that experience, and why did you decide to leave and go into business for yourself? It's
Okay.
a two-part question,
Yeah.
but like, I know you learned a great deal. 16 years is a long time.
Long time.
And what was your like role during that time, or like how did it transition and like evolve?
Absolutely. So I started out, my first stint at Universal was as a college rep
Okay.
while I was at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor.
Nice.
Quick story, it was my last night interning at WZAK in Cleveland. So I was an intern. So that's what I figured out early on. I figured out, instead of taking these garbage jobs in high school, I wanted every summer to be part of the music industry.
So in high school you started interning.
In high school I started
Oh, wow.
interning. And then my first time at college, I didn't intern, I was working at record stores.
Gotcha.
Worked at a record store in high school to find out like what was selling, obviously so I can get a discount on some music.
Of
Now,
course,
we went to hook up now,
Of
let's be
course.
clear. And then the next summer I was at WZAK, my last night there, I meet a rep from Def Jam. And I was driving the big Hummer around at all the, radio remotes and things like that. And I met Drew Rives, who is still a regional promo rep with Def Jam to this day.
Nice.
And he was saying, I'm leaving Cleveland, I'm moving to Detroit. I was like, well, fancy that. I'm going to Ann Arbor. You need an intern. He said, well, holler at me when you get there. When I say I bugged that dude every day, I was like, hey, you need an intern? Hey, shuck, jive. And he brought me in, and I became his intern. And then shortly, probably like 2 weeks after that, a college rep position opened up, and I became a college rep. So I kind of incubated that from just being a very small role to trying to see how I could impact other markets. So I had friends all over the country, and specifically in the Midwest. So I would go to their schools and feel like, what's the radio station here? Who are the DJs? Well, let me service them with some of the records and the CDs that I'm getting so they can play our music there and then report that back to the label and say, hey, I'm spreading this word across all these college campuses.
Right.
So I did college rep, and then Drew gets into a horrible accident, a horrible car accident. And he was out for a little bit, and he hit me. He was like, listen, I need your help. So I need you to reach out to all these radio stations, make all the flyers you're doing, talking about what the single is and giving all the stats about how many spins it's getting, who it's produced by. And so I was putting together, basic one sheets about all these singles and sending it out to all these radio reps, radio stations and the like.
Was it what did it entail for you to send it out? Like you were mailing it out?
I was literally mailing it out.
Okay.
Like, here's a CD. Type up on, it must have been Publisher back in the day. Microsoft Publisher, this garbage flyer, but still informative to tell them about what the single was about. And I was mailing out to every radio station in his territory. So as a result, I was learning about all the powerful radio stations in the Midwest. I was learning all the names. Then, as being in the building, I was learning about retail. So learning about the how radio impacts retail and vice versa. So if someone's getting hot on the radio, then how is there somebody at the record store, a consumer, going to know about it, and when is it going to be on sale? That that chain of events, if that makes any sense.
Got you.
So started out as a college rep, and then I moved to New York in 2001.
Oh, that was life-changing.
That changed the whole game. I'm 21 years old, living in New York City.
Yeah.
And an intern at Def Jam.
Right.
Now, by the way, 2001, I don't know if anybody remembers what Def Jam was like in 2001. Def Jam was on top of the game, right? We're talking about Ja Rule. We're talking about Jay-Z. We're still talking about LL, still killing the game. DMX. I mean, everybody. I mean, I remember being in New York and going to see the Jay-Z Takeover Summer Jam.
Wow.
That was my first ever New York concert.
That's fire.
Sorry, my second one. The first one was How High Tour. Method Redman, shout out them.
Which is also a great first.
I mean, come on now. So, you see the Jay-Z takeover going on, and you see on every level there's a different label.
Right.
So you have, Universal being on one of the floors. The next floor you have Def Jam. The next floor you have Rockefeller Records sharing it with Bloodline, DMX's label, and seeing the interaction between these labels, how they dealt with Def Jam, and just seeing. Back then, any celebrity or any MC or any artist would just come up in these labels. I mean, it's largely different now. Right. You know what I mean? But that was a hub. People would come up to the spot and like, hey, talk about whatever. And so you're seeing the top tier artists. I'm wet behind the ears, 21-year-old, like, man, that's Redman right there. Like,
right, like
Reggie
what's happening right now? What's happening right now?
or even being under the tutelage of Kevin Liles and Leor Cohen and Julie Greenwald. And my bigger boss at the time, her name was Mignon Espy. Or Shantae Bacon. Like, these people went on to impact the game in ways, that are still being felt today.
What would you say all of those people that you just named on the executive side had in common that you took from characteristic-wise? Like, or just the way they moved? What was one thing that they all shared that you realized, like, okay, in order for me to succeed, I probably need to kind of not emulate that.
Yeah, for sure. Or at least reflect that.
Better word.
Number one is, can we curse?
Yeah.
Take no shit. Like,
I'm like,
no. Get at it. Like, there's no excuses. No one's gonna cry for you because something didn't work out. I'll give you a quick story. First day there. The first day I was at Def Jam as an intern. Cisco's second album came out. Now, nobody remembers Cisco's second album. What we do remember about it is it flopped. And I remember sitting down at the desk. I got there early before the other assistant was there because I was sitting at the same desk as an assistant. And the phone rings, and I look at the phone. That joint is lit. And it keeps calling, and I see Leor Cohen come across. So I pick up the phone. I'm like, hello? Ricardo, here, you know, mumbling, not
Right.
knowing what I'm supposed to say. He's like, I don't even know what you're saying. Who is this? It's like, I'm intern, and of course my voice is now cracking. He's like, where's Mignon Espy? Where's Mignon? She's not in yet. Well, listen here. He starts going at me. Like, I don't give a fuck. Like, you better get a hold of her very quickly because we have a crisis on our hands. And if you don't get her on the phone sooner than later, you won't even have to be here anymore.
You're fired.
I'm like,
Everybody's
I'm an
fired.
intern. I don't have her cell number.
Right.
And of course it's 2001, so cell phone, like you barely
Right.
have a cell. Point being, my two-way pager might have been working. I was like, oh, let me see if I can get her. Point being, day one, get your job done because nobody gives a damn. And however you need to make it happen, make it happen. So it was almost like learning. I kind of compared that era to like crossing Omega Psi-Phi. Like hardcore, you're gonna do this.
You?
No, I'm not. I didn't, because I DJ'd. I wanted to DJ not for free. I wasn't gonna DJ for free for nobody.
Right,
I was gonna charge everybody equally in college. But point being, it was go hard or don't
go
come
home.
back.
Yeah.
Seriously. So that was number one. Number two was, if you don't believe in your product, no one's gonna believe in your product. So you wear it like a badge of honor. You wore that logo. You wore the product that you represented. You wore the lifestyle, right? It was bigger than just music.
Right.
Def Jam was one of the first real lifestyle brands. You know what I mean? Like, people wanted to wear the varsity jacket.
Right.
When I walk through the airport, or even today, if I'm still wearing like an old hoodie, someone will stop me and be like, "Oh snap, do you?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Before they even realize what artist, they know that logo. So
Right.
it's almost like a badge of honor. So those are some of the things I learned to emulate, because that goes across verticals. I don't care what product, service, or anything you're offering. In order for someone else to believe it, you better believe in it tenfold and sell it like your life depends on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree. So now let's fast forward a little bit. Why'd you decide it was time to go?
So the paradigm shift. Records weren't selling. You know, retail was going out of style. And one thing that we all realized, whoever was in the music industry, is that the industry, quote unquote, was reluctant to change as a result of technology.
Right.
Right? When I was in college, that's the first time that we had, you know, LimeWire, or you could download music for free. And the industry did everything in their power to stop it, instead of learning how to embrace it
Exactly.
and use it for its own purposes.
Exactly.
So by the time 2016 came around, I knew I was on thin ice. I was like, well, I'm dealing with, you know, the sales side of things and the marketing side of things, and there's only so much bandwidth and so many more bodies are going to pay for it. Because to be quite honest, I lasted through at least 10 layoffs. And you always think, you know, when you see something happen, you're like, oh man, I better shape up and change. But I always had, okay, I'm still producing. I'm still, you know, I always understood there were other lanes for me.
Yeah.
So I started cultivating those lanes early. But I got caught victim. I got laid off. And, you know, specifically, like you said, I was there for so long. I wasn't reading the writing on the wall like I should have been, in terms of, okay, let me embrace technology myself. Let me figure out how to
Right.
new lanes, right? In certain regards. And as a result, you know, I got laid off, and I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Let me try to figure it out. Shortly thereafter, they're like, hey, you want to consult for us? I was like, oh yeah, let me keep this check going a little bit.
That's what I was gonna say. So, because you currently consult for major record labels and brands, including Def Jam, 300, and many others. So, like, although you left to go into the business for yourself, you maintained those like relationships.
Absolutely.
And how and why are maintaining relationships a good thing, or how has it been a good thing for you? Obviously,
It's been my lifeline. It's my lifeline.
Job.
Like every element of my career has been a result of a relationship that I've been able to foster. And foster is a different thing than just being able to walk into a room and slap somebody's hand, right? And say, hey, what's up? And then you walk your other way. Everybody knows that. We've all been to industry events, and you see this person at the same time, and you know each other's name, and you slap hands. But at the end of the day, can you get business done?
That's real.
I was able to cultivate and foster relationships with folks. Regardless, like at the end of the day, when I got laid off, I was like, will people still rock with me because I'm no longer with Def Jam?
Right.
I was really worried. Like I had an identity crisis. Then shortly thereafter, I got divorced. So I had to press reset for real. Point being, I realized after that whole little crisis, people rock with me because of me. People say, yo, what's up, Spicer? What's up, Rick? Because they know who I am first and foremost. And a lot of times when I'm doing business with folks, I don't even start talking business until an hour goes by. How's your family? What's going on with you? How are you feeling? You know what I mean? And that kind of ability to foster relationships has suited me well because that's how I was able to parlay that into jobs, to business opportunities, or to just having a good network of people who know how I get down regardless and still can ask me a question these days because I know how to make something happen for them.
That's dope. I'm really interested in, I do want to hear more about what you were doing over at Universal during that stint because, I'm sure you learned from interning into marketing, into sales.
Absolutely.
But I'm really interested in this company that you, interactive tech startup that you started,
Yeah.
AXS GRNTD.
Yes.
So could you explain that company and like what it does? I know it's like virtual reality, augmented reality,
Yeah.
like that sounds cool, but like no one really knows like
Right. Sometimes they're
how.
catchphrases, right? They're like, yeah, VR and AR and interactive tech. It's
Yeah,
like,
like
yeah.
we have a place here, that like has like a bunch of VR games and it's like a reverie. It's like
Right.
a, VR bar. It's like
Absolutely.
you see stuff like that, but it's just like, okay, so how is Access Granted positioning itself in this space?
Absolutely. So it started off my business partner, Adam Davis McGee. He was working for a company here in Atlanta that was teaching kids how to like record in 360 in VR. They were making videos.
Dope.
And so they were giving them like very rudimentary 360 cameras and doing music videos. And a company that was helping them foster this was like, hey, you know what? This is kind of a great idea. Maybe we can try to utilize this to help facilitate music artists to do more compelling content in VR and 360. So they went to my business partner and said, what do you think about this? He was like, I think I can do this, but I need somebody's help. He hits me up.
Dope.
And he knew I was,
Why'd he hit you up?
because we knew each other from the music. He used to be a manager, road manager for many groups, Grits and some other companies and artists. And then he also used to work with Pharrell and the Neptunes, as well as Will.i.am incubating his interactive tech laboratory. So he was like, I need to talk to my man Rick. And I knew him like 10 years ago. We met at this party series that used to happen back in the day called Broken Bougie.
Familiar.
Broken Bougie. If anybody knows about Broken Bougie, that was a turning point in Atlanta and specifically a turning point in Southern hip hop, right? So we met during that era. 10 years later, he comes back. He's like, I'm back in town. I'm living here in Atlanta because he was in Nashville at the time. Hey, listen, bro, VR music industry, go. And for me, all you need to do is give me a couple touch points and I'll put together a plan really quickly.
Yeah.
And I was like, this VR specifically and AR and interactive tech is the next way to produce compelling content and how music is going to be consumed in the future, right? There's nothing like, there's few things that can recreate a once-in-a-lifetime experience. One of those things that can do that is virtual reality. You can take people to different lands, to different experiences in the comfort of their own home. Now, it might cost a little bit of a premium, right? So I was thinking about how can we integrate VR into live shows? How can we integrate VR and AR into the recording process, getting intimate knowledge about how things are produced? Because that's the true story, right? Music, obviously, I hold a high value for it, but the industry, like people don't put a lot of value in it as much as they used to, right?
Right.
They're not willing to buy it.
Right.
What they're willing to buy is experiences. They're willing to buy the merch. So how can we activate the merch through augmented reality? Like you can put a logo on the shirt, put up your mobile phone or a tablet and make animations happen or have exclusive content come from those pieces of merch. So now we're starting to elevate the merchandise experience. We're elevating the concert experience through augmented reality. Everyone is looking at concerts through phones now. Everybody. You can go to your favorite concert and people are barely even looking at through their
The stage,
eyes.
right.
They just want to see the best picture. So if you can coordinate ways to have additional content through the mobile device, that's a level up, right? Shoot, think about Justin Bieber. One of the last projects I worked on was the last Justin Bieber project. And he had an added value campaign for his tours that ran somewhere between 2,500 and 5 racks, depending on what it was, like, meet and greet and some extra special stuff. All of those D2C offerings sold out in the first hour. Think about that.
That's crazy.
Like, so they may not have bought the album, but they're willing to pay exponentially more for an experience. And that's what goes back to my earlier statement about the music industry being reluctant to change as it pertains to technology. Consumers are going to get it however they want to. So if you offer something that they're willing to pay for, they'll find value in it. They'll spend their money on it. So it's funny, I'm talking about VR, AR. It's still the same thing, right? It's still creating experience from great music and having a direct connection with the artist and the content creator.
Yeah.
Think about like Joe Budden. Joe Budden is the embodiment of that. Music is great, but people love Joe Budden because he's a nut.
Right.
And that's why they tune in to the podcast. That's why they tune into the Revolt Show. That's why they tune into Love and Hip Hop, because they believe in him. If you believe in that person and that's the center of the universe, you can sell them anything, whatever tool that may be, merch, music, movies, interactive tech. It's just a tool to have a further connection with said artist.
That's dope.
Or brand, for that matter.
Right. And speaking of working with Justin Bieber, you've worked on several marketing campaigns for artists, and I don't know exactly what that entails.
Okay.
But you were involved with the likes of Kanye, Jeezy, Justin Bieber, Rick Ross, Ludacris, and so on and so forth.
Right.
But it specifically says that you did or created these marketing strategy and campaigns for them. So give me an example of a project and like what your role was in that.
Right.
Besides Justin Bieber, because we kind of talked about that.
Yeah. So it comes from, so here's the not old school way of doing things, but the record would come out and we would figure out how to roll this album out properly. Rollouts are kind of a dinosaur nowadays. Now it's like drop the record and then let it work.
And then see what happens.
And then see what happens, right? But obviously before it was, let's make sure we bring as much awareness to this project as possible before it comes out, okay? So that's from number one, from a retail standpoint, but then also from a digital marketing standpoint. How can we reach end consumers with messaging, with content, with music, in order for them to come back and really anticipate that record? So when that first week comes out, back in the day when first week numbers were really important, make sure they come in and buy, but also continue over the life cycle of that album. So it would be me and the marketing team come up with not only regional things, because obviously each region has its own touch points, right? What works in Atlanta doesn't work in LA. What works in Miami, or let's use a smaller market, what works in Birmingham doesn't work in Atlanta, because here in Atlanta, we see artists all the time. Like, oh, 2 Chainz is coming down. People like, yeah,
Okay.
2 Chainz be at my barbershop.
Right. Saw him last week.
I saw him at the car wash.
Right.
So it's about creating marketing, like full-blown holistic campaigns from a retail level, from a digital level, from a social media level, from a consumer activation level, and from a creative standpoint for each artist. So that's what we would do. We would come up with creative ways to come up with great touch points. So I'll give you an example. Worked with Big Boy from Outkast on both of the albums that came out in Def Jam. And we did things, for example, like collaborative partnerships. So we would collaborate with New Era and come out with a collaborative New Era hat. So then throughout his tour, we would have pop-up shops. Before they were called pop-up shops, we would have the New Era rap van with Big Boy's album art. We'd have the collaborative bundle, CD, plus the hat, and then we would sell that in conjunction with whatever consumer activation, like a retail signing. So at all their flagship stores, Big Boy would pull up, you'd buy the bundle, get it signed and autographed, but you would also have a dope piece of merch, and then we had a movable billboard all around town, and, which is the biggest part, we were using OPM. We were using other brands' money to help pay for our marketing efforts. Because as we all know, a lot of times marketing budgets are super small.
Yeah.
So it was my job to help try to find brands who would help leverage the celebrity of the artist for whatever their messaging was, so they can help pay for some of the stuff that we want to get out there.
Right. Well, first, before I leave Def Jam, I started doing college rep stuff when I was in college for Def Jam.
Say word. What school?
Howard.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because my friend at the time, Tia, she was working there.
Oh,
And,
yeah, Tia?
You know Tia, Lil Tia?
Of course.
Of course. Okay. Yeah, so
We had many kind of, hey, Latia, I need a PO number for this. Can you give me?
I figured. So, yeah, she kind of helped me. I worked with her with, like, Big Sean and Tiana Taylor at the time.
Of course.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to mention. And so I did get some insight on, like, what it takes to come up with these, like, campaigns.
Yeah.
And, like, you know, how big, what was that, Big Sean? I Don't Fuck With You.
Oh, yeah, huge.
That was huge, you know,
Huge.
but, like, just to keep moving off of that, and then whatever Tiana Taylor was working on at the time, it was
It was her
dope.
debut album, which is so funny because
was that?
Yeah, that was her debut album,
remember.
and you talk about a rollout. Had a tough time with that.
Yeah.
Because, of course, we all know by now Tiana Taylor's an absolute star. We knew that then, but it was just a matter of like really trying to connect
How?
the dots. Because people were like, "Well, what does she do? I know she's a dancer. I know she can act, but what's the music like?" And so trying to make that connection was hard. But it's so funny. She's before her time, because now everyone has to be like that. You have to be kind of all things to all people and have people fall in love with you, like I said earlier, for them to even buy your music or let alone buy a ticket to a show.
That's real.
She's fine. I don't say she finally, but the music matches, right?
The lifestyle.
Bingo.
Right. That makes sense.
But I'm sorry I cut you off.
No. I was reminiscing on the times. It was fun. It was a good time to, experience that and see what it takes to really get into marketing and rolling out an album, and the importance of having it on college campuses.
Huge.
Huge. Targeting that market. Like, talk about for the artists who might be listening, the importance of understanding who your demo is and who your audience is. Because I actually watched an interview that you did where you were like, you said, basically, in a nutshell, like, you'll talk to an artist and they'd be like, you'll ask them like, what, who's coming to your shows? And they'd be like, everybody
All
loves
the
my
time.
music, right? So what's the importance of like identifying that market and identifying that demo for the artist in particular?
Right, and I've probably said this in that interview as well, but unfortunately, people treat music as if it's not a business. They think they can just come out with music and people will buy it, and then as a result of people buying it, they're gonna get hot, and then they'll get rich and famous. Like, that doesn't happen in any other business vertical. Every other business vertical, people recognize the consumer and analyze data based upon who that consumer is. If you don't understand who your consumer is, you're just shooting arrows in the dark. Yeah. You're just like, okay, this person might like this, person might like it. And then you end up wasting energy and resources on things that are not going to push your objective further, right? So let's talk about college specifically. Because this is a great example. If you don't realize if you're selling music that you have to make black girls love you, like, I don't care. Like, let's be clear. Black women and black girls, specifically in college, turn the needle on every piece of lifestyle and culture. So if you don't understand that first, and we're talking about from an urban perspective, right?
Course.
Like, if you're Taylor Swift, you don't necessarily need black girls. But if black girls rock with you, you super win, right?
Right.
But let's talk about on the hip hop side or on the urban side, or if you don't lock in with black females first, because number one, black women, they produce the culture, right? What hair is supposed to look like. They tell you if a dude looks whack. They tell you if, oh, this is not moving me in the club, because if girls aren't, if you throw a party and there's no women there moving, your party is whack and lame.
I just had that conversation. It's like, men are gonna have a great time if women are having a great time.
That's the only way they have a good time.
Right, and you know that as a DJ, like,
absolutely,
you know it's a play that's gonna, like, what's a record right now you would play to get women moving or to get the club moving?
You gotta play Drip Too Hard, man.
Drip Too Hard.
That Drip Too Hard goes so crazy.
I knew that's what you were gonna say. If you didn't say that, I was gonna question it.
No, Drip Too Hard is that record.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or even Sicko Mode. Sicko Mode makes
Sicko
women.
Mode.
But that's an interesting record because that has male energy, but women dig it so tough.
But also, just the energy at a party significantly changed. I mean, like, when I was throwing parties in high school, we're dancing, twerking, like, that's like, now everybody is just,
swaying and dabbing, and
we all, women and men alike are doing the same dances, so it's different. But yeah.
But to your point, if you don't understand who your consumer is, you waste time and energy and resources. But even more than that, you have to find the connection. Back to that point, you have to have people to believe in you. And once you figure out who actually believes in you, that's where you can target most of your marketing efforts and sales efforts. Once you get that, then you can get data from them. And let's be clear, what makes the most money out of everything? Data. If you can understand data and then convert that into sales, you can take that same business practice and put it into any business and you'll win, as long as you understand the consumer. Like, let's be clear. Apple knew their consumers so much, they realized how they can just come out with different iPods, different laptops. It's the same thing, just in a different box, but they know their consumer rocks with them so hard because they're so brand loyal. Until obviously more recently when you're like, man, my iPhone is acting a fool up in this.
Right.
But that's how you get somebody, because you understand who that person is who's buying it.
So I want to speak on, like, before we kind of wrap this up, you have several ventures going on. Would you consider yourself a serial entrepreneur?
Not a serial entrepreneur. I was thinking about this yesterday, as a matter of fact. I was cleaning up the crib. And my lady one time was saying to somebody, oh, yeah, he makes music and has a production company, but he does it as a side business. I was like, Nah, none of this stuff is a side business. It actually is the same. It comes from the same point.
Which
It's
is
understanding consumers. It's also targeting consumers and also coming up with creative ways to market to them, right? So it's all, and creating content as a result of that. It's all spokes from the same wheel,
gotcha.
right? Okay, I can produce a tool that allows you to visualize something from nothing, VR, AR. I can produce a record that conveys a certain message to a certain end consumer. Same thing. Marketing and consulting, I'm trying to figure out how to message to that consumer. So it's really reproducing the same ethos and same kind of objective and plan, but in different ways. So am I a serial entrepreneur? No, I'm just realizing how to exploit the same tools, the same skill set in a multitude of ways.
Got you. Let me ask you what other tips and strategies you would suggest for artists today in 2018 in respect to like technological advances in social media and like trends, just like what you've observed today and what works in your opinion.
So, I mean, here's the real deal. People have mobile phones, which are mini computers in their pocket, and they spend a boatload of time on it. However, with that being said, we have a limited amount of space on this phone, right? Like, I'm not going to download a whole bunch of new apps because I can barely take any more pictures or videos, right? Or I used to be on Snapchat. Now everything's on Instagram. I don't even use this anymore. So the point being, it's similar in the fact that, you know, consumers' bandwidth for content and whatever is limited, but if they find true value in it, they will spend all day. So number one, you as an artist, you have to have a compelling story. And I'm not saying you have to make up something, right? You don't have to be like, oh, well, I used to be the biggest whatever, fill in the blank here. And luckily nowadays, because of Drake, Kanye, J. Cole, Kendrick, and other cats, you can be a common individual, point on point, like a regular guy, and have a compelling story about how you got there. You don't have to make up a fantasy as the biggest drug dealer in the world or the baddest guy on the street, but just come up with a compelling narrative and connect with your end consumers and be honest and authentic about that. Because people nowadays can smell that from a mile away. If they feel that, number one, you're telling a story, that's cool. Someone else has the same story. Or if they feel that you're absolutely directly trying to market to them, they're like, let me find it on my own and deal with it. So coming with an authentic story, narrative, do that first. And that even comes with the music. Like, you can chase a hit, you can chase a sound, but being original while still being tethered to what is making the market move is the best way to go, as opposed to just rinse, wash, and repeat. Or, hey, Lil Baby sounds like this. Let me start rapping like Lil Baby. Or let me start rapping like, you know, Thugger. Let me, you know, or let my music sound like Metro Boomin or somebody like that. Take what's great about that, the energy and feel of it, and reproduce it in your own authentic way. That's the only way you're going to be successful in today's game.
Right. I agree.
Let's talk about technology, though. But back to technology, is utilizing the tools that are available to you.
Right.
Right.
That's what I was going to say. Like, where if everybody's living on Instagram, that's where you need to be at.
You absolutely need to be there. However, with that being said, like, you have to raise above the fray. So looking at other brands that are outside of music, that's what I tell anybody who's an artist. If you want to be a great artist, look at what's compelling and working in other verticals of business, right? So like Instagram, for example, you know, that story or those highlights, utilizing that to the best of your ability, not taking low quality photo, all that kind of stuff that's basic Instagram stuff, but recognizing how the bigger brands are able to do it. And I don't want to say copying it, but, you know,
reflect,
finesse it.
Finesse it. Yeah, I think that's great stuff. I had a lot more to ask you, but I think we're running low on time.
It's all good.
You know, maybe a part 2 of this conversation, because you
I would
seem
love
like
it.
you got a multitude of knowledge in this arena. But what's like next up for Rick Spicer? What is the goal for you within, like, you know, we're coming up on a new year.
Right.
You playing your first 6 months. What's going on? Like, what's the goal?
So first and foremost, on the music production side, my company's called Sweat Beats. Sweat Beats is located here in Atlanta, Georgia, with my co-producer Dia Kuzi Hodari. Shout out to him. Our first foray is our newest plateau is going to be in doing more music supervision. Right. For TV and film. Obviously, Atlanta's a hot pocket for that and a hotbed for new film and content. So we're doing a lot more music supervision not only just producing the music, but finding other talent to help contribute to film, TV, and ad campaigns, as well as sports initiatives. We're doing a lot more in the sports arena nowadays, whether it be college sports, in-arena, out-arena.
Big bags. I
Bigger
hear
bags!
you.
With your name spelled right. And you're not waiting for the album to actually come out. How about that? They pay on time.
Big bags. I understand.
So doing more in terms of that. Then on the tech side, growing the business, growing more in terms of really being able to activate spaces. So, for example, we really want to start tackling, or we're starting to tackle bigger shows, coming up with shared augmented reality experiences, i.e., if you have that mobile phone, if everybody's in the crowd looking through their mobile phone, having the same experience go on through your tablet and your mobile phone at the exact same time. So when the song comes on, then it triggers a dragon, or it triggers some video content, or it triggers some lighting that's going on that's a little bit cheaper than if you had the big rig over a stadium, right?
Exactly.
So it's activating spaces with AXS GRNTD.
That's fire.
Getting more involved with the city and different municipalities. And so like doing murals for artists where you can put your mobile phone up, and from there, content can come from those murals. So it's not just static, right? Static merch is old school. If you got a poster up, you're putting up posters and you spending money on posters, if it's just sitting there on the wall, it's not doing anything. Make it do something so it can be more compelling for consumers. So activating spaces with AXS GRNTD. On the consulting side, working more with like independent artists and independent labels, because, you know, for everything people say about the new generation of artists, they're like, the music is bad, but the great thing about it is they're super independent. They're like, I don't need no label. I don't need anybody else. Just give me a bag to do what I need to do. So it's really helping the underground proliferate, because that's the only way this is going to last. Because soon we won't have labels per se. We're going to have like Verizon or Apple or Spotify just buying up your album, licensing it, throwing it out there. So understanding how these digital platforms are really the way by which to make music happen. So connecting those dots for folks and showing them the digital pathway.
Rick Spicer's in the future, y'all.
Trying to be.
He is in the future. He's a few years ahead. Y'all might want to catch up. So tell them where they can find you on social media, and keep up with what you have going on with AXS GRNTD, Sweat Beats, so on and so forth.
Absolutely. You can check me out on Instagram at Rick Spice, R-I-C, no K, S-P-I-C-E, like Spice. So Rick Spice on Instagram. On Twitter, you can find me at Sweat Beats ATL. Or you can find me anywhere in these streets and say, what's up? You know what I'm saying? With some Jordans on. Holla at your boy.
Thank you so much. And as always, thank y'all for tuning in to the ID Music Podcast. You can find us on social media at IDM Podcast, as well as myself at Sammy Approved on all social media platforms. Thanks again, Rick.
Rock on.
This is dope.
Sonically superior.